Okay, we are back. I'm going to ask each one of you. I've got four stories to go through, so I'm going to ask you each to have a look at them and not to sort of gasp or to fall apart with it. First one, I'm going to Ace, I'm going to stay with you because you're the person who brought this up actually, and this is particularly for you. The ATP and Wimbledon have confirmed that no ranking points will be given to Wimbledon due to the discrimination. Now, the ATP put out a very strongly worded statement. They said the ability for players of any nationality to enter tournaments based on merit and without discrimination, and this is the most important, without discrimination, is fundamental to our tour. So I mean, it's a big move for both the men's and women's tour organizations to take, isn't it?
It's the strongest move I think we've seen. And we discussed this previously, tennis is an individual sport, save where you obviously have doubles. I think it is in a unique position that team sports aren't in. And I think it is an extremely, extremely strong position to say, because what they're not advocating here for is for either side. They're advocating for their athletes, and perhaps that's something that we can't, for other reasons, see in other sports. But it's a very important stance to see, and it's strong.
I'll add something, just like it's like as most of our viewers know, and you guys know, like I've worked with tennis players for many years, and still in contact with many of them. We have our WhatsApp chats as well, and there's one there's one chat where I'm in where there are 8 different nationalities: Ukrainian, Russian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Croatian, and Irish, Ireland, and German as well. Sorry, and they're all female tennis players. And when this announcement was made by Wimbledon, they immediately reacted. Now there had been chat about it. There had been, they had mentioned it like it's bad. They had all said, "Look, we don't like what's happening. We don't like what's happening." But at the same time, they all got about, because many of them, they've toured together, they've played doubles together. Annie Mac, is this a good thing or a bad thing, though, that the points are taken away? Will it make a difference? Because the ATP weren't so strong on Novak Djokovic, for example.
I think potentially going forward, it's a good thing. The fact that it maybe lays down a marker to other major Grand Slams and tournaments that if this kind of thing's going to happen, you're taking out top seeds, then the points that you're getting are then based on those people not playing. And then it then skews and muffs up the other tournaments that they're involved in later on, where you're then getting, the players that haven't been involved and then seeded lower and ending up, skewing the tournament slightly in a way that they're then playing other, the sort of middle ranking seeds earlier rather than the lowest ranking ones. And then are you going to get issues of them going, okay, well, my prize money should have perhaps been this, but I've ended up playing this guy who's dropped in the ranking points, who should be first, second, third, fourth. So you're creating an issue by then bringing them back in if you allow the ranking points for that tournament to go ahead. So in that regard, I think it's a good move. They've taken it away. At the same time, are you now going to have players going into it going, well, if there's no ranking points involved in this, are they going to play differently? Are they going to take it as seriously? So there's that issue as well. But I think, personally, I think it's a good thing.
Okay, because we know the Roland Garros that's going on. The first round was I think played today. The qualifications have already been completed on Friday, I think it was, or Saturday. So there are some of those matches actually live at the moment. Andrew Flint, your last word on this one. I mean, it is, fair play has been done in this, because Fedjo, for example, said that for all the basically, if a player makes a statement on any way, shape or form, or in any way, shape or form, they say they're either for this or against this, they will be disciplined. That seems to be a better way to take it, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely, I do, because it's it's what the stereotypical line that a lot of people trot out that is just unrealistic, saying sport and politics should mix. We know that in theory we would like that, but it's just not realistic. But by doing this, you're basically protecting the players. They may just accidentally be proud or say something without really meaning to push a political angle and drop themselves in hot water. Whereas by doing this, by saying, look, we're basically giving you a warning. We're helping you out here. Just stay clear for the tournament, and it works both ways. Then it's taken off the table completely. I think it's a cleaner way round to do it, because you're not telling somebody what they must believe or support, or even for only just for the 2-3 weeks for tournament. And I think that's the whole point. It should be as much about the sport as possible, and this is one way to do it. So I think it's a sensible way around to do it that way.
Yeah, for example, Sasha Sasnovich, the Belarusian player, she won. Now, she's playing under a neutral flag, and she won today. She beat a Chinese opponent, and afterwards, there was a question put to her about like, oh, what do you think? And she said like, it's not my place to comment on Wimbledon, on what they've taken the decision. Like privately, I will say something else, but publicly, it's their tournament. They can say they can do what they want. Next topic. This is interesting. I just want to get a quick take from Ollie because, of course, this is a strange one because we all follow football. We know what sports are like, and in the San Francisco Giants fans we call the worst league after a baseball, and an empty bottle was thrown onto the field at players. Now, of course, back in 2008, there was water bottle that was hit Mike Piazza, the catcher. He basically pointed out who hit him, and the guy was then arrested and given 30 days in jail and a further 3 years suspended sentence, or 3 years probation. I'll start with Andrew Flint. Andrew Flint, I mean, football fans are the worst, aren't they?
They certainly are there. I mean, look, the throwing objects onto a pitch, if it is in any way possible, and nowadays with the amount of CCTV and the amount of security that around it, should be pretty much possible to ascertain who has done it. I would come down very hard, regardless of the sport, the person, the occasion. It doesn't matter, because safety really can come into it. Football fans, I think a really odd trend has, well, I say odd, I've noticed a trend in the last 5-10 years of seemingly more aggressive behaviour in stands again. And what really frightens me is, I mean, we've seen a lot of fans indulging in pitch invasions recently, and it's happening more and more often, and in seemingly less dramatic circumstances as well. It doesn't take much to get fans right up close to players. This is actually starting to get serious. And I worry that actually football fans are just going to get worse and worse and worse. But, I mean, they can't be blameless in this. They are launching things, objects, onto the pitch. I mean, I remember.
And I think we're having some difficulties trying to get you in. So, Esau, I'm going to move on to you. Back in 2014, a player when he's playing against an Algerian team, Kabylie, Albert Bojongo, he was struck in the head with an object that was thrown from the stands. His team lost, and he then taken to hospital and died. It is something that's been happening. We saw it with Crystal Palace this week, for example, when an idiot came on to try to fight Patrick Vieira of all people.
Yeah, I think, and we have to look at the last week in football alone. We've seen obviously pitch invasions. Pitch invasions are one thing. Throwing objects is another. As Andrew rightly pointed out, the level of CCTV, the level of ability to identify these people is huge. The ability to give long-term bans to players, but also the ability to really crack down on clubs so that they make those people undesirable at games. Like, there's a difference between people bringing coins and throwing them on to objects like a bottle you get in the stand. Like, people are bringing in objects with the thought of throwing it at someone. You're not sitting there going, this I may or may not do. I think the other huge problem we're seeing with football in particular and fans in football is there is violence perpetrated towards players. So let's say if you go to boxing, a lot of the fights are between fans in the crowd. There's very little aimed at the actual participants. And that the level of aggression that football fans, as Andrew also said, have shown in the last few years at a time when security is at its highest is very, very worrying. Like Everton celebrating not being relegated to end up having Vieira trying to get across a pitch. How a Premier League manager did not have security around him at that minute is insanity. Today there was an incident where it appears, and it's online at present, if you go on Twitter, it looks like the Villa keeper was assaulted trying to get off the field in a game where his team lost. Like, it's insanity.
Andy Mack, I'm going to ask you on this one because my fervent belief is in the last few years we've seen it. We saw it last year, for example, the European Championship final in London. Not just alcohol, it's cocaine.
Well, I think it's kind of irrelevant what it is. I mean, we saw the final at Wembley, fans storming in the ground to try and get in. We've seen Billy Sharp getting, thankfully, not headbutted properly by a fan coming onto the pitch after his team lost, because that could have been a lot more serious. You've actually all ruined my hot topic for the week. I think they should just shut grounds at this point. I think the league association has to step in and say, if you're going to, I mean, we discussed this the other week. I think in sports where there's segregation between fans, and they can't behave themselves even then. So when you're then having pitch invasions at the end, it's like this spillover of aggression, and I think it largely comes from social media allowing people to hide behind this sort of practically anonymous thing, even though your name and all your details are all over it. It then gives people, I think, an excuse when they're in a crowd, when this mob mentality takes over. People somehow seem to forget that the CCTV and all of this isn't there, and they just act absolutely abominably. And yeah, we've seen 3 cases now in the space of a week and a half, and I think they need to take serious action. And I was quite happy that the Billy Sharp incident in the playoff in England between Forest and Sheffield United, the guy was jailed within 48 hours. That's the quickest I've ever seen that reaction. And that needs to happen more, because, as you're saying, people can end up dying, people can end up being severely injured. And in most of these cases, these are players that have lost. It's not even they're doing it out of like, oh my God, we've lost to you. It's just pure hatred.
Look, I've always said that it's the same as when we had that, when it happened in the Oscars. When you're on stage, you don't expect someone to come up at you. When you're on the field as a player, the worst thing I ever had was, or one of the worst things I had was like in a cup match in Ireland, going to take a throw in, and this was a schools game. I'm going to take a throw in and running with the ball to take a throw down the line, and somebody just launching an apple buff and to hit me in the back. I got the fright of my life. I literally thought I was going to die for a second because it hurt, but also it was that. What was that? And I dropped the ball, turned around, and the guys who were there they had a great laugh, But again, I've seen it at Daleyman Park back in the 80s, where scissors being thrown onto the pitch at a Polish keeper. So I mean, no one's immune to it. You're right about cocaine. I think it's just this like idiocy that breaks through. We're going to go very quickly on to the next one and bring Andrew back. Just a word from each of you on this. This is Wagatha Christie, which is an interesting court case going on. We'll cover it next week. The verdict should be out, I think, on Tuesday. Who's going to win, Andrew Flint? This is between Rebecca Vardy and what you call her, Colleen Rooney. So who's going to win, Rebecca or Colleen?
Neither of them in the court of public opinion. I mean, just the comments that are coming out of this, basically making both of them sound rather silly. I mean, Colleen Rooney trumpeted her intelligence at being a super sleuth a few years ago with that infamous sting operation that led to the whole Wagatha Christie tag. I think realistically, she actually has half a point, because whether it was Rebecca Vardy or her agent, whoever it turns out has actually leaked the stories to the Sun, you can't untie yourself.
I just said, Colleen Rooney was planting fake stories on to only people she knew, and the only person she had not blocked on her Instagram, just like a small group, was Rebecca Vardy. And all these stories then started to come out because she was wondering who was leaking these stories and who was like talking with.
But I mean,
And it was Vardy.
The one key thing, though, I don't know if everybody else noticed this or picked up on it at the time. That was 3 years ago when she sent that first message, and she was very, very careful. I thought this was interesting. She carefully worded it, saying it was Rebecca Vardy's account. Even then, she said that clearly she'd taken legal advice to use that wording. There's no way. I mean, with nicest possible respect to Colleen Rooney, I don't think she would have had the legal nous to think that far ahead by herself. So she was already clearly planning for this to get to this stage, to get to a legal court.
Oh, yeah, no, she I think herself and Wayne, like Wayne said, he didn't know anything about it. I do think he did. I think it was well planned out. And Andy Mack, with you on this, I mean, they've lost. There was a telephone was dropped into the North Sea. There was a laptop was destroyed and stolen and rendered useless. This is British cycling all over, isn't it?
I think Andy Flint should take them on a pedalo as far as he can and watch them capsize. I really couldn't care less who wins, who loses. I don't want to read Jamie and Rebecca Vardy's WhatsApp chat from 2016 about who said what to whom in the dressing room of what. Could not care. Capsize them. Get rid of them.
Send all of them down to Davy Jones' locker.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's because she said this is the whole thing. It's like a Dave Jones' locker, and Colleen didn't actually, Rebecca Vardy didn't know who it was. Isolt, for you, they've likened this to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation. There's a lot of money involved in this. There was poor Peter Andre was absolutely destroyed in this, completely ridiculed by Jamie Vardy's wife. Who's going to win?
The lawyers, they're coming out of this well. I think in the court of public opinion, Colleen Rooney, I know the comment Andrew made was very, very accurate about saying it's Rebecca Vardy's account, because I suppose a lot of celebrities are quite well aware of the fact that they don't necessarily always run their own accounts, or you may have other people who have access to it. So cleverly worded, definitely, and I don't think that came from her herself. I think there is an interesting, from a sports perspective, outside of the fact that Rebecca Vardy feels the need to waste the court's time, and Colleen has actually publicly said and under oath said that on 3 separate occasions she tried to settle this, despite obviously feeling she could be vindicated because of the fact that she didn't feel it was worth basically airing their dirty laundry, and also a waste of court's time, which it is. I think there is some interesting sub-discussions within what we've heard. Obviously, it's now concluded. In terms of the England team dynamic, and my favourite part of the entire trial was not the Davy Jones's locker comment, which I thought was brilliant by the counsel representing Colleen. It was in fact when Wayne Rooney had to talk about the awkward discussion he had to have with a teammate, being Vardy, about his wife FaceTiming into the games room they were all as a team relaxing in when they were at the World Cup. Because all I could think was, if we're talking about teammates and awkward discussions about partners, we all know which teammate we're thinking of. There's only one John Terry. So, look, it's been enjoyable. It's been an enjoyable
We'll move on. Okay, the final one, talking about like awkward conversations and absolute car crashes in every sense. Tiger Woods had to pull out of the PGA Championship. It's going to be decided today. Ireland's Seamus Power is doing very, very well on it. Now, Tiger's a guy who basically played on one leg and won the 2008 US Open. Andy Mack, with you on this one, Tiger, is he ever going to get in the woods? Is that it? Has he just finished?
Yeah, I think he should take his last drop ball and walk away while he's still got a tiny, weeny fragment of some sort of pride in the sport left after at least making a comeback. I mean, full credit to him for getting fit after what was a horrific injury.
And we reported it on the time. We were live on air, and it broke, and we had I think that same time as February last year. So it was amazing that he got out of that bloody thing alive.
Yeah, and he gave it a go. He got himself to a point where he thought he could do it again, and I think you have to tip your topless, whatever you call it, golf cap to that. But now I think it's quite clear that he's nowhere near the level, and perhaps he should go and give bad advice to other up and coming stars.
Easel, there was a funny one I remember at the time, and it was also kind of nasty but funny in a way. Padraig Harrington, the Irish player, was saying about, like, he used to feel bad for Tiger Woods, that he was like, when all of them were sitting down in the bar having a drink or having a laugh, or playing pool. Actually, he was saying Tiger Woods used to just go off on his own and up to his room. And then, of course, Padraig added, well, actually, at the time we thought he was just there on his own. Ha ha ha. So it doesn't look good for Woods. It is time to call it a day. I mean, he finished his third round 9 over par.
But he made the cut. And I think that needs to be remembered. I also think, to an extent, one of the big problems with Woods' comeback is going to be, if he continues to play, is that he will need to be specific as to the courses he can endure. Because if he's making the cut, that means he's good enough to make it through 2 days, essentially. The problem is, with an injury that's that severe and that the recuperation is still underway, trying to walk that much. Like, I walk a lot, and I think if you factor in the injuries he has to compound it, when he's also rotating his body, he needs to be looking at courses that are essentially, in the nicest possible way, Denmark. Flat, minimal exertion outside of the game, because he's clearly still able to get to that level in his game, and we saw that even a few weeks ago with his first return tournament. But I think 4 days is obviously that bridge too far, and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to watch. Do you know what? It's an amazing ability. Whatever you think about Woods outside of his personal life and all of the other stories we've over the years had to hear about, the mental strength to come back and play again is insanely impressive.
Listen, there's no two ways about it. He I'd always asked questions about like what he used and so on, but at the same time, he had the natural raw talent. Now, he was pushed from an early age. It was a terrible situation that he fell in. His father was an absolute horror show, like Richard Williams, but at the same time, how he stayed, how he was normal, like in any way, and I was very proud to have seen him play actually up in Canada over 20 years ago now. And even then, people were talking, he's awesome. I didn't know who he was from Adam, but Andrew Flint, time for Tiger to put the driver away in every sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can well imagine him coming back for exhibition matches in the future. His brand is still a brand. I mean, again, like you mentioned, it's not a squeaky clean career or personal character, but there's just so many mitigating circumstances, and his mental strength is quite phenomenal, and that is still worth something in the future. I would like to see him not disappear completely from the public eye, but from professional competition, look after himself, but come back for some exhibition matches. Maybe he'll be involved in future Ryder Cups in an advisory role in some sense, just an inspirational figure for younger players. Who knows? I don't think he should be lost from the sport for good, but professionally, what more has he got to prove? He's proven everything on a sporting front.